We got y'all some chairs. This is Donna and Fred Larkin. They have a daughter that went through the Crossing Points program, and they're just going to tell you a little bit about experiences of having a child with a disability from the day she was born until now. She's what, 25? 26.
27.
Woo. She's wonderful.
So, oh, you go ahead.
Probably the best way to start is we weren't supposed to be able to have kids, and we were married 10 years before Heather came along, and we had a couple miscarriages. And now our daughter is 26, our son is 23, going to be 24, and he's going to get his PhD in statistics here.
Awesome.
So, when Donna got pregnant, we had no idea that there was any issues or any problems. We just didn't think. And when Heather was born, she came 3 weeks early. She was born on Christmas Eve. And the doctor came in. She was born at 11 o'clock, 11:18 in the morning. And I was walking some friends out to their car later that afternoon. And the doctor came in and told Donna that he was 99% sure that her daughter had Down syndrome. I had no clue what that was. I did not know. I mean, I was pretty naive. And so I come up the elevator and I saw Donna and her mom at the nursery looking in, and I could tell something was wrong, but I didn't know what it was. It wasn't right. So I went up there and her mom left as soon as I walked up there, and Donna told me what the doctor said. So I called the doctor and I said, "Come on, let's fix it. I mean, that's what you do. You got a problem, you fix it." And he goes, "You don't understand. It's not fixed. It affects every cell in her body." She has trisomy 21. There's trisomy 21, there's translocation, and mosaic. There's 3 different kinds of Downs. And in fact, her boyfriend has translocation, and she has trisomy 21. So where she's strong, he's weak, and vice versa. They complement each other. They've been going together for
6 years.
ever. And anyway, so we spent Christmas Eve in 1986 till 3 o'clock in the morning reading about Down syndrome. We needed to educate ourselves on what we were going to face. As we were leaving the hospital, one of the nurses said, "You need to contact the developmental center." And the developmental center we had never heard of either. It was called the Benton Franklin Developmental Center. Now it's called the Children's Center, in a building that is there because of Heather. And I'll get to that. But anyway, they started school at 8 weeks old. She started a process of fine motor skills and gross motor skills, and they started working with her when she was 8 weeks old. Anyway, we lived in Kennewick, Washington at the time. Anyway, she went up through the until she was 4 years old, and then we moved to Phoenix, Arizona. And the program in Washington was a wonderful program, but so underfunded. And so I started a fundraiser for the school to do something for them, and I didn't know what we were going to be able to do, but I had to do something because here's this little girl. She goes to school with all these kids who have such these needs, these tremendous needs, and not enough teachers, not enough resources, not enough. They needed a new copier, and they couldn't afford it. So we got involved, and Donna would volunteer there quite a bit, and got to know all the teachers, and she didn't go back to work after Heather was born. She felt it was more important for her to stay there and work with Heather, and I'm glad she did. But as the process of going to school there, they were in a building that the high school wanted to expand to, so they kicked them out. So they ended up into an elementary school that had been closed for regular education, but it was okay for our kids because it was basically a volume deal. There wasn't as many kids. There was 90 at the time. Then that burned down, and they lost some equipment. And so they went to an old Sears building, which was way too expensive to heat and cool, and it was way too big. So they ended up in a bank, a branch of a bank, where the rooms were where you did one-on-one speech therapy with the kids were not any bigger than I don't know, it would be from about where I'm standing here to this wall, and about half that. That's what they had to deal with. It was not designed to be a school. So when she was about 2, we started a golf tournament for the school. And fortunately, I had friends that had contacts with the Seahawks, so we got the Seahawks involved. And so the first year we raised $8,000, and that went to copier and a new copier and some equipment that they needed and that sort of thing. And the next year was 13, and then the next year it was 13, then 18, then 23, then 25, then 28. And at this time I had moved. I'd left that area. I moved to Phoenix, Arizona with my company. And then I went, I was in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and a friend of mine that was helping me with the tournament had a heart attack and he died. Fortunately, there was a guy there who's pretty influential, was dating one of the board members of the developmental center. He started coming to the tournaments it was about 5 years in a row he'd come, and he was really impressed with it. And he said, if you want to, I'll take it over. He's an author, he's a golf professional, he's an entrepreneur, he's got all kinds of things, and he's taken it to where they raise about $80,000 every at the tournaments. But when we started, we needed two things. We needed recognition. We needed to raise money. But to raise money, you got to raise awareness. So that's where the Seahawks come in, because we get the 3 radio stations or TV stations, and the publisher of the newspapers, stepdaughter, worked at the developmental center, so we got front page coverage. And in the Tri-Cities in Washington State is where the N reactor was, and where the nuclear industry is huge, and they've got multi-billion-dollar contracts. They have to give so much back to the community, and I knew this. And so we needed the recognition so they could justify giving us money. So once the tournament got so big and got so much press, that they started writing us checks, for $50,000 here and there and that. Long story short, in 2003, they moved into a $1.6 million building paid for, because of the awareness and that the golf tournament got for them. The main therapy room is called the Heather Larkin Room, and so that was that. I mean, just what she has done without even trying. One thing about the educational process of a child with Downs, or any special needs child, is you don't have any idea how important you are to them. She still talks about teachers in the 5th grade and what they told her. She'll say something. I go, "Where did you get that?" She says, "Amy told me." I says, "Where did that come from?" Because it was really good. I want to know where she learned that. Was it TV or what? No, John Myron told me that. And I go, "Really?" Or Coach Nix. I mean, all these teachers she'll bring up, and so you guys don't have any idea how important you are to these kids, because the influence that you have on them might not be apparent immediately, but long term it does, and it comes up years later. I mean, she's 26, and she talks about things in grade school, people that have influenced her, and things that have been said to her and taught to her. So it's what you're doing is really, really important, and there's such a need. I hope it's not that way now. We started our teachers $5,000 less at the developmental center than they could make at regular school, and I hope that's not the same, is it? Tell me it's not good. But you've got to be dedicated, and you got to. I mean, to do what you do, I can't do. I couldn't do it. You have to have an aptitude, and in my opinion, you have to have an aptitude for that. You have to have a gift, so to speak. And if you guys are doing this, you have a special gift, and the blessing that you give to the kids is amazing. And the knowledge that you're able to give them, and the techniques that you use to teach them, and you painstakingly find what stimulates each child and helps them learn. Because Heather can learn, but it just takes her longer. Will she drive a car? No. Does she write very good? No. She can read to me what she writes, and we can decipher it. It's a little hard to read, but I kind of get the idea, because she gives me a list of stuff she wants to do. I'm retired, so I go to the grocery store and she gives me a list of stuff that I have to get if she's out of salad, because she has to have a salad every day, and she's real regimented. I mean, real routine. Yeah, I mean, which is okay. I mean, I know exactly, but breaking that routine can be a little more of a challenge. She's, and I can say this, and it's not cliche, she's taught me a lot more than I can ever teach her. She's taught us a whole lot of things, and her brother, because as her brother grew up, he grew up learning to be kind, to be patient. And I said something one day, I said we were doing some planning, I said, well, I want to plan this out so, you know, after we're gone, she doesn't become a burden to you. And he got angry with me. She's my sister. She's not a burden. And he just idolizes her.
And vice versa.
Yeah, they do. But I think he's the person he is because of her. And like I said, he's a great student. He'll have his master's here in December in statistics, and then he'll get his PhD. But just his development has been greatly enhanced by her. Questions?
Can you tell us a little bit about some of the more positive encounters you had with teachers and some of the more negative?
I can think, the biggest one I can think of is when she was in 4th grade. She was at a school and it didn't have the resources. And we were in a Kyrene School District in Phoenix, Arizona, is one of the finest in the country. And they do have resources, but they're concentrated on certain schools because there's so many schools in the area. And the school that she was assigned to because of where we lived did not have. She had an aide but there's no program. So she called us one day and she said, we need to meet, we need to talk. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, what's wrong? And so we sat down with her and she described Heather's day, where, you know, everybody's really nice to her, but nobody sits with her at lunch. She sits by herself. And she's in a classroom that now the work at the 4th and 5th grade was over her head. She didn't understand math, and she didn't understand reading, she didn't understand science.
It's actually 6th grade.
Was it 6th grade? Okay. Anyway, so she didn't understand what was being taught. So that's right, because she went, yeah, okay.
It was like middle school.
Yeah, and, yeah, because she went from grade school to middle school, okay. And so the teachers, the aide was saying, so as they're doing things, she sits in the back of the room and she's bored. She doesn't have people are nice to her and they all say hi to her, but she doesn't have any friends. She doesn't have anybody to interact, anybody like her to interact. And you'll notice that when kids, like at Para, when the kids are all together, they are so comfortable with each other and they're totally different. But when they're around normal kids, they're real self-conscious. Heather is. She's real self-conscious, she's real quiet. But you get around a group of kids that have challenges like she does, oh, she's comfortable as can be. And they all are. So this teacher, this aide, was saying, and when she got done, she said, we need to meet with the board. Or was it one of the board members, or I think. And there was a couple of teachers, somebody from the Board of Education, and we met. And she described her day in detail. And when she got done, we were all in tears. I mean, this poor little girl is lonely. I feel so bad for her. Her day was not productive. She was not learning anything. She was not getting anything out of school. So the aide advised that we move her to a different school, and we did. And in that school, there was a program. There was actual class that she could attend and could be taken out of the classes she didn't understand and go to a class to where she could get, you know, some good and get some education and get some advancement mentally. And that was probably one of the defining moments of what we went through with her as far as school, realizing that we've got to pay closer attention, because at that point we thought everything was fine, because she'd come home from school. How was school? Oh, it was great. No, it wasn't. We didn't know that, and that we felt bad because we didn't know. So then we ended up moving to Tulsa, and she ended up in a school there, and it was okay. And there were some things that they had special ed class, and there was some inclusion, and but you know, I don't know. It was just we were there 3 years, and she did okay. And there was a camp and this sort of thing that she had. But then when we moved here, I never heard of. We didn't know what Crossing Points was. In fact, at church, somebody mentioned Crossing Points, and she started out at the high school, and she was at the high school for probably at Hillcrest High. Yeah, about 6 months, and then she got into Crossing Points, and when she went into Crossing Points, you know, she's at a level, and she's doing okay, you know. But when she come to Crossing Points, then she was like she just stepped up another level, and every year another level, and every year the progress you could see with her was, I mean, very, very easy to recognize and measure how much she was doing, because there's so many things that she couldn't do before that we worked on that she was doing now, because she's in a setting like this where they're doing it as a group and they're learning, I think, from each other a little bit too. Where here's, I mean, this is how I picture what in her, how her mind was it's okay for everybody else, okay, I can do this, you know, and she just kind of would come home and it's like, whoa, I mean, she's doing good. And the Crossing Points program that we have here is I mean, we couldn't be in a better place at the time to have her in Crossing Points, in the benefit that she got, and that's where Cody and her met. If you ever talk to her, she's going to tell you about Cody. That's her boyfriend. My boyfriend's Cody.
And we've been dating for 6 years.
And in 2016, when I'm 30, we're getting married.
So the wedding's still on.
So far, I don't know.
I'm supposed to be the usher now. The usher,
You're the
not
usher,
I'm the
yeah.
usher, not the
The
usher.
Husher,
Yeah,
yeah.
I'm planning on that cruise. I mean, it's
They've
on my
got it all
calendar.
planned out, they've had it planned out for
Oh, yeah.
years.
I'm the maid of honor. It's very
And
important.
it might be in Vegas, and then it might be on a cruise, and then it might be,
Oh, who knows?
yeah. It's
Hollywood was one place, one time.
Yeah.
So you talk about some of the activities that she's involved in, some of the things she's been doing
Para
over the
has
past several years.
we're fortunate to live here because Para has a therapeutic recreation program for mentally challenged kids. She's been involved in it just about since Crossing Points. That's how she got involved with Para, was through Crossing Points, through Amy. And she's busier than we, I mean, socially. She's got cooking class every other week.
Twice a month.
A dance,
And a
and a
movie.
movie, bowling every Wednesday, swimming every Wednesday. They go on field. She just got back from the beach. She was there for 5 days. And she had a ball. I mean, she just had an absolute ball.
She's been involved in Special Olympics since she was 8. And she's done all kinds of things, from swimming to bicycling to bocce ball to bowling to track and field. Track and field was her least favorite. She played soccer for a while, she didn't like that either.
The reason being is because it's boring. Track and field is boring. Because you don't get, if you got to, you know, you have to wait for everybody to do everything. She didn't like to run.
Plus it's hot.
And it's hot. Yeah. She liked bocce ball. You guys know what bocce ball is. It's a pretty fun little yard game. The swimming, she's always been involved in swimming. In fact, she went to Ames, Iowa in 2006 and was in national games, National Olympics. And she did quite well. With a couple of golds and a silver. She did quite well.
It's probably coaching.
It was
It was a
coaching.
coaching.
Amy's
Amy's
a
a
coach.
And if you every time, we always go to state games with her, and that is probably my favorite time. It's the most relaxing time there is for me, because I know what she's doing and how much fun she's having, and then to sit around with all those kids and kind of just watch them and stuff. Some of it's heartbreaking too. I remember we were at a track meet when she was doing track and field, and this one boy, and he had Downs, and it was a race. And they took off racing, and he was trying so hard, he ran out of his shoes. His shoes just fell off. And he stopped for a minute, and he was going to keep running. And he left, here's a shoe here and a shoe here. You know, it's just that, just the fact that he was trying so hard, and he was so far behind everybody else. I mean, the other kids just, you know, but it was important for him to give it his all. Nationals was an amazing experience for us, because we got to go to, because there was downtime in between meets. So we would go, we watched weightlifting, and we watched baseball, which we didn't do very good. We watched basketball, which we won. We took the gold. And that was fun to watch, because there was a kid with autism on there that he was either on or off. One game, I swear he hits 12 3-pointers. The next game he hit 2. You know, but he was fun to watch, because and everybody was encouraging him, and it's you've all seen those videos where they let the guy take the shot, and it's the equipment manager or whatever, and that's what it's like. It's just a whole bunch of that, watching that at Special Olympics. It's an experience. And how long did you say we've been doing it?
She was 8.
She So, the activities, and you can tell when if she isn't active, you tell it, because she starts to slide backwards, and you'll see it. You'll see her start to slide back with sentence structure. You'll see her start to just basically in her thought process. You'll see her, she's not busy, she starts to slide backwards, and you see that. And we see that in summer. She'd be in school at Crossing Points, and then by the end of summer, you could tell. You know, she was starting to slide backwards, and she'd go, school would start again, and then she'd be fine. And she'd keep climbing, and then she'd slide back a little bit in the summertime, and then she'd keep climbing every school year. And so we try to keep her really busy, number one, because she wants to. Number two, that it keeps her stimulated, keeps her going.
She's real involved in Best Buddies too. I don't know if any of y'all are Best Buddies here at the university, but she's been involved in that for 5, 6 years.
Yeah. Best Buddies program is great. I mean, they you know, it doesn't take a lot of time, but they have an activity about once a month for an afternoon, and the kids look forward to it, because they all get together with their best buddies, and they show off their best buddies. You know, and they have some really cool things. Some of the fraternities here do stuff too, and sororities that are just great. I mean, they'll throw a Christmas party for them, Halloween party. Yeah, some of the great places are pretty cool.
Can you tell us a little bit about her work and what she's done since high school, or since Crossing Point?
She's had more fun working. She likes to work, but it's more she likes to visit than she likes to work. She worked at Taylorville Primary School in the cafeteria. She did that. I do have to say one thing though that we did, that Donna did. When she was, after she got out of the hospital, after she was born, they had us meet with a geneticist. This geneticist met with us and explained trisomy 21 and all the technical terms and that sort of thing, and kind of what. And she gave us this book, and it was called To Give an Inch, and kind of told us that that we'd probably have some challenges and what to expect. And so I took the book home, and it tells you that 60 to 80% of the time they'll be short in stature, hard of hearing, nearsighted. Up to 80% of the time they'll have heart problems. A lot of them will never be able to do basic functions, and they'll die at 35. I mean, that's the book this geneticist gave us. And I looked at it, she was born in '86, and I looked at the book, copyright 1974. And I'm thinking, we had a meeting with the geneticist again, and I was ready for her. I says, she said, any questions? And I said, yeah. And I slid the book to her. And I says, have you read that? She says, well, it's been a while, yeah. And I says, you really think it's a good idea to give that to new parents of a Down syndrome child? And she goes, well, you need to know the facts. Yeah, I do. Look at the date, the copyright date. She looked at 1974. I says, those studies and those statistics come from people who are institutionalized. And institutionalized, back in the 60s, 50s, 40s, Down's kids were institutionalized. I had a boss at the time whose daughter was about 20 years older than Heather. And she was institutionalized. And the reason they put her in an institution was that the doctor told them, as they were having, she was the oldest. And they said, you need to put her in an institution, and they can't. And the thought of putting Heather in an institution just made me at the time, and now it makes me sick to my stomach, because why would you do that? Why would you do that to her? Anyway, but and what my boss told me, he says, the doctor says, because we had one other child and another one on the way, they says, if you do not institutionalize her, the other kids will grow up slow. The doctor told him this. So here they are, and he says, we cried every night thinking, okay, what am I going to do? We sacrifice the other kids to her, or the doctor says we put her in an institution so the other kids can be normal. I mean, what do we do? And so they had planned on having like 4 kids total. So they had, the one was pregnant, no, she had 2, and the one with Down's 2, and then she was pregnant with their 4th. And so they institutionalized her. And was she able to be productive? Not really. I went back and I looked and did some research on institutionalized people with mental challenges. And they they don't have a chance. They don't have a chance because they're not stimulated. There was one study, and I wish I had the facts on it, one study that was done where they took, it was in an orphanage, where they, and this is cruel, but they did, and they had a dozen orphans that were pretty much close to the same age, and they were infants, and needed, you know, fed and diapers changed and that sort of thing. And they took half of them and they sung to them and played with them and talked to them. The others, they fed them and changed their diaper and, you know, gave them stuff to play with, but really didn't interact with them and really didn't spend any time, you know, playing with them and singing to them and that kind of stuff. And without fail, every single one of the ones that weren't interacted with, who weren't sung to, weren't played with, grew up with some form of delay or disability mentally. And so I look at the statistics that were in that book were from institutionalized people. Now, and of course our doctor says her life, depending on her heart, which her heart is healthy. And there is, statistically, they do have heart problems. A lot of the Downs kids do have heart problems. And yeah, she is a little nearsighted, she's a little hard of hearing. Her metabolism is slow, so she's gained weight over the years. And those are physiological facts. I mean, that's okay. You know, we can deal with that. But her life expectancy without heart problems is normal. But only normal if she has a normal life. If she's institutionalized, it's 35, would be what the book said. So Donna put together a program, or a package to give to new parents of Downs kids that had a recording of these Downs kids in Canada who took over the school's cafeteria and did everything. And it was about 10% of the negative stuff that you gotta know, but 80% of what, or 90% of what can happen, what they can do, you know, what is possible. As a parent, you have a hope, you know, I hope. For example, we went to the developmental center and there was two real severe Downs kids as we were touring the school before Heather enrolled. And they had to have help with their hands to clap because they were so severe that they just sat there. And a lot of Downs kids, they have, you know, their tongue hanging out, you know, and you've probably all seen that. Heather's doesn't. You know why? Daddy don't let it. Put that tongue back in your mouth. And then she doesn't do that, you know, and because it's because of lax muscle tone. It's low muscle tone, and so it's just that when they relax, the tongue goes out. Well, that muscle tone could be strengthened, and that's what we did. Put that tongue in your mouth, and she doesn't. She doesn't do that. But they were sitting there, and their tongue was hanging out, and they had to be help. And I looked at that, and I'm thinking, okay, that's where we start. That's what I expect. That's what we're going to be dealing with. And so, as a parent, that was where the bar was, right there. And so everything that she did, when she took her first, and these kids couldn't walk, when she took her first step, that was a miracle. When she said her first word, Daddy, Daddy, used to drive her nuts to get home from work. Hands are going, Daddy, Daddy, and of course I exploited that. But then when she exploited that. But so everything that she did, when she learned to tie her shoes, that was great. We never expected anything. All we expected her to do her best, and she does pretty darn good. So when you take that expectation and it be zero, everything she does is just a great accomplishment. She learned to walk. Everybody, the movie Sleepless in Seattle, right? Everybody seen it? That beach is called Alki Beach, is where the houseboat that Tom Hanks lived on was moored at Alki Beach. They didn't really have, they put that in there for the movie because Alki Beach is just a beach. They just brought that in for the movie because it's kind of protected. Anyway, she learned to walk on Alki Beach. My sister lived on Alki Point overlooking the beach. And we would pick her up and hold her by her hands, and her little feet would dangle, and then we'd get close to the sand and they'd touch and she'd pick them up, touch and pick them up, touch and pick them up. And then we did that several times, and then so we got home from the beach, and it was about a week later she got up and she walked. She got the idea. She just didn't have anything to stimulate her to get that idea before until we're holding her and her little feet would touch and she'd pick it up, and then she did. And she got that motion by doing that on the beach. So Alki, Sleepless in Seattle, I love that movie because we have a little bit of attachment to it because of the beach. But so when she learned to walk, it was a good deal. And so everything that she's done has been magical for us because we had that expectation of sitting there having help just to clap the music. And she really, really, really was into country music till she met Cody. Now it's Michael Jackson.
She works now at a hair salon that's not far from her house. And she just works a few hours, a couple of days a week, but she sweeps hair and she folds towels. And she visits with everybody in the world. And so it's like a big old, it's a very relaxed atmosphere and everybody knows everybody, and so she likes that. She volunteered at the Speech and Hearing Center for about 5 years, I think, and she would do their shredding for them. She loves to do that, so. As far as any other kind of, and she worked at Crossing Points actually.
Yeah.
She was like a graduate assistant for like the year after she graduated from here. And she would run all over campus. She would they would give her a walkie-talkie. She called it a walkie-talkie. And then that way they could keep in contact with her wherever she was. But she would go from here to, what's the one? Graves Hall to deliver stuff. And she learned learned how to watch for the bus schedule because she was volunteering at Speech and Hearing then. And so she'd catch the bus wherever it was and she'd take it to Speech and Hearing and then she'd come back here, so. But she enjoyed that too.
She worked at the soup store, she worked at UPS store, she worked at,
Those were all job training sites.
yeah,
when she was at
but
Crossing.
job training sites. But I tell you what, they really helped. I mean, she would come home and talk about her job and, you know, I did this and I did that, and, you know, I'd come home and say, I shredded 11 bags.
Counter bags.
Yeah, she counted garbage bags, how many, she'd come home and tell us how many garbage bags she shredded.
She does the laundry at home too. It's
She
really
does her own laundry. Yeah, I told Donna, I says, you know, because we've always done everything for the kids. We didn't, I mean, we spoiled them, but they turned out fine. And it's just what we wanted to do. So as a parent, it's hard to let go. And so I told Donna one day, I says, you know, Heather sits home, and she's got nothing to do, she does projects. She used to do these rings that would be, these little paper rings, you know, chains. Paper chains. And I swear she'd do them and they'd be 100 yards long. And that's what she'd do all day. And I says, you know what? I says, you need to teach her how to do the laundry. I says, she wanted to do it. She loves to do it. It gives her purpose. And you gotta see her. Because if the laundry is too heavy, because she'll take her her hamper, dump it into a
laundry basket.
Yeah, laundry basket. And then she'll push it, because it's too heavy to carry. If it's not too heavy, then you see her. She'll carry it into the laundry room, and then empty, it'll be on her head. So we'll be sitting there watching, and it's the cutest thing, because we'll be sitting there watching TV, and here she comes. And she goes to the end of the laundry room, and then she'll be coming back with it on her head. Or just on a whim, she'll empty the garbage. She'll go around, she'll go to her room, her bathroom, she'll come into my office and do mine, and just kind of go out the house, and she's got a garbage bag, and she's emptying the trash in it, and, you know, but she leaves it by the back door for me to take out.
She doesn't like to do dishes though.
I
That's
said,
my job.
you gotta do dishes, and she was not mom's job. I says, no, you really need to learn the dishes. No, that's mom's. And now that I'm retired, it's my job. But no, there's so many things that she can do. That walking to her in school when she was a couple of months old, I never thought, you know, I never expected or demanded. I just, you know, we encouraged as much as we could. We've never demanded out of her at all. We've always just encouraged her. But we've also treated her just like one of the family, like a normal kid, like Taylor, our son. I mean, she got away with no more than he did, and vice versa. And we would go to restaurants. And this happened to be one particular restaurant several times because they knew they got to know us. But they said, we love taking you bringing your kids in here. They're so well behaved. And they were. And because we wouldn't expect anything different. I mean, we expect them to behave. And Heather, too. I mean, just because she has Down syndrome doesn't mean she can misbehave. And she knows that. And but what you have a tendency to do is be more patient. And that's hard sometimes, but you're more patient. And, you know, they say they grow up and they're loving. Well, they say that's how they are. No, it's not. In my opinion, I don't think that's a genetic thing. I think that's something they grow up loving because they get more. This is my opinion. Dr. Stein, I don't have any clue on this. This is my opinion. What I see is that kids with Downs are treated with much more kindness, and people have more patience with them, And that's why they grow up and they're loving and they're sweet, because they're responding to how they're treated. That's just my opinion. That's what I've seen. And we've been patient with Heather, but we've also been demanding. We don't cut her any slack when it comes to behavior. And we've had our ups and downs. We've had our times where we've had to have little chit chats with her and little, we're not gonna
She's
tolerate
not an
this.
angel.
Well, she's my eyes. But she can.
She's pretty close.
Can you talk about episodes possibly with IEPs as a future educator, some things that may have been a little put-offish or some things that really were beneficial to that experience?
I don't recall any really bad IEP experiences, teacher experiences. I think that we've been fortunate. I don't know if that's normal or not, but in grade school and stuff, we pretty much handpicked our teachers. We were able to do that. So the IEPs that we all have were always a positive.
They're also honest too, and I think an IEP, if it's not honest, it doesn't look good. And we as parents, it was hard for us to say, no, she can't do that. Because when you're doing an IEP, what level is she, or can she do this and that, and it's hard to say, well, she does it sometimes, but not always, no, she's not proficient. But yeah, we've had good experiences with IEPs. There's never been any discrepancies or disagreements or anything. I mean, we've just kind of, you walk through them and you're honest about it.
We've never had to go above anybody's head.
Yeah, did you always get the sense, did they make it clear to you? Some of that gets to be mumbo jumbo.
Some of it is kind of mumbo jumbo,
But you
some
just-
of it you just
yeah,
sign
yeah,
away and
okay.
figure they know what they're doing.
And we've had it explained, to us enough that it's still not quite clear, but we've got a pretty good idea, and some explain it better than others.
We've had really good rapport, I believe, with the teachers and the professionals that we've dealt with over the years. And so if we've had questions, we've gone to them and they've explained it. Either that or we're just really trusting, I'm not sure, but.
Well, I think,
We've had good experience.
we have, and Heather will tell us, if there's something she doesn't like, she'll tell you. If there's something that you can gauge pretty good, except for this, when she comes home and says everything's fine at school, it's not. She liked her aide, and everything was fine with her and her aide, that was fine. But school itself, no, her aide had to come and tell us, so, but, yeah, we've been lucky. We've been lucky with,
Yeah.
and, well, like I said, we handpicked her teachers when she was in grade school, so that was nice. But again, some of the things that she comes up with that she learned in school, that was taught to her by, and she can tell you, she's got a great memory. When you ask her, she'll tell you who taught her and what.
If it's something she enjoys, she has a great memory. If she does not really care one way about something, it doesn't stay. She's a great memory. But
Selective.
selective.
Yeah,
Like her
all
hearing.
kids are though, really.
I am too.
So,
I'm just curious, I know she used to love Hannah Montana. And now
We've
that
had a
she's
little talk
Miley
about that.
Cyrus, what's the deal?
No, she still thinks that if we try to explain to her that she's gone kind of trashy, she says, Mom, you be nice to her, I love her.
and I'll tell her, look.
However, she's like Lindsay Lohan too, and she finally got the picture there, but Miley Cyrus is still.
And she calls it an alcohol. I says, but Heather, she's drinking alcohol and smoking cigarettes and talking bad, and using bad language and this and that. And she goes, oh, really? I hate that. And then she turns around to me, I love her.
Still like.
Sometimes it takes her a minute to warm up to ideas,
It
It
does,
does.
it does.
But you give her long enough, she'll get there.
She finally comes around.
And then it goes like anything else. The more you repeat it, the more accepting she is, and especially if she's Michael. I tried to talk her out of Michael Jackson, but Cody likes Michael Jackson. And if Cody likes the movie, she likes the movie. Cody had deer meat for lunch. Yeah, chicken for dinner. Yeah,
Yeah, he hung the moon up there in the sky.
she did.
He did, he does.
And if you
He still.
and I really want to get her go, because we go with a group after church on Sunday. And 1:30, she has to talk to him. And I said, but what if he's talking to his other girlfriend? So he doesn't have another girlfriend, he has me. You're a girlfriend.
But they are very routine. They talk at 1:30 every day and at 7 o'clock at night.
To 8 o'clock.
Till
At
8
8:01 they're done. 7 o'clock the phone rings, at 8 o'clock it's done.
And if they both have something to do and then they don't, if it happens during that time, you say, well, you can talk to him after that. No, he won't call after 8 o'clock.
He's as regimented as she is. Yeah, very routine.
Maybe more.
Yeah.
I think a little.
Yeah.
When they go on, like to the beach and stuff, or where they go on trips and that, they both have T-shirts. One says "I love Heather," and he has one that says, or she has one that says "I love Cody," and they wear those T-shirts. And
But they're very normal as far as like what you and I do in relationships. They do the same thing at the beach. They would sit on the couch until 10 or 11 o'clock, would sit next to each other and talk and watch TV, just like any other boyfriend and girlfriend would do if they were at the beach together. And then time for bed, they kiss each other goodnight and
off they
go
go.
on their way.
They're very committed to each other. I think we could all take a lesson
Big
to
lesson.
be as committed to your significant other, your spouse, or whatever. But that unconditional love is amazing that they have for each other. So.
And bless Cody, because if I get on Heather about something, she'll go to him and complain. He'll say, no, you have to listen to your father. You have to show respect. Bless his heart.
Until they're 30.
Yeah, until they're 30.
I don't know what's gonna happen then.
Well, see, we said it as a joke, you know, kind of, I opened my
Catching
mouth.
up to bite us.
Yeah, I says, something about her, when the first year they were going together, and I says, well, he said, we want to get married, and I said, okay, when you're 40. And he goes, and Cody got thinking about it, and he talked to his grandma about it, and he goes, 40's a really long time. And so he come and talked to me, and he says, that's really a long time. And I says, well, how about 30? He goes, okay, 30's okay. So one night he was at dinner, and I says, hey, would you like another roll, Mr. Fred? And I said, no, Cody, I'm fat. I don't need another roll. He goes, you're not fat, Mr. Fred. And I says, Cody, 29. So about 45 minutes later, it was just him and I. And he looks at me and he goes, are you serious about that 29? And of course, I'm thinking, you know, at the time they were 21 or 22, and I said, yeah, it'd be fine. You know, and, but then they talked and said, no, too young, 29 is too young, 30 they talked, they decided on this. That 29, no, 30 is, no, it's gotta be 30, 29 is too young. But they're pretty funny,
It's quickly approaching.
yeah, I know, in my mouth. But she comes up with some of the funniest stuff. We were driving down over in Montana to see my folks, and we're driving down, and she hates it when and all men do this. I don't know why we do it. You need to kind of jump on the car a little bit, or tap the brakes a little bit and stop. I was doing that just to irritate her, and she goes, "How about one of these?" It cracked me up. It took me so off guard because I've never heard her say that. Where she got it, I don't know. She got it from here. Anyway, but yeah, it just cracked me up because it just out of the blue it came. And then she'll say, I'm not a morning person. And I'll say, you need to get up. I'm not a morning person. She's
You know why?
because Cody's not a morning person.
She's not a morning person.
She's really not.
Unless it's something, now, she was up to, like, lickety-split, going
To go to the beach?
Oh,
Oh, yeah. If she's something she wants to do, she's up and done, showered, ready to go. Standing in the garage, waiting for us to get in the car. Questions or concerns you have? Questions or concerns that you have? I mean, I don't know much about teaching or teaching or the process, other than what I've seen her go through, and then of course what I went through as a kid. But the impact, I've said that 3 times now, that I can't emphasize enough, the impact you have on the kids is phenomenal. And they'll remember you forever. I mean, forever. Because the influence that you have, might not be evident right away, but it will down the road. I mean, we saw it as parents. So, what you've chosen is, we said, you've gotta be blessed, you've gotta be gifted, and you've gotta have a lot of patience. But it's also rewarding because I think looking at the reward you get from helping these kids that 30, 40 years ago would have been institutionalized, and now can be fun people to be around and productive members of society, without dedicated people and teachers and people willing to commit to have more patience. These poor kids would have no place to go.
Any other questions?
What's gonna happen when they get married? Like, when they,
Like, you don't.
I think we've talked about this a lot, and the thought about her getting married just scares me to death. But then again, you sit there and you go, okay, why should they not be able to have each other? We have somebody that we know who has a Downs boy, and he was never allowed to have a girlfriend. That's never allowed to have a girlfriend, and he is lonely. I mean, he's got some friends, they talk sports, but he doesn't. He wanted a girlfriend, but his parents thought, no, that's inappropriate. Okay, inappropriate. Why? Why should he grow up lonely? Why should he grow up and grow old alone? To me, that makes no sense. I can't picture her being alone and being lonely. I don't want that. I mean, she had spent one school year like that, and I don't want to ever see that again. So it's kind of what's going to happen. We don't know. We're going to play that. We're going to play that a little bit at a time. But I don't want to be alone. I mean, we had kids late in life, and that's one of the reasons. That your chances of having a child with Downs increases with age. And I was 35 when she was born. Donna was 32, and she's going to outlive us, obviously. Is she going to be alone by herself, or in a state-run institution, or is she going to have a partner that she can live semi-independently?
It'd be nice if she could be in some sort of maybe a group home setting, a safe group home setting, that maybe he could be there too, and then they could maybe just be in the same place. I don't know about marriage. I think I was naive years ago on it could work. I'm not so sure.
But we're open to it just for the simple fact is it's not fair to her if we make the wrong decision. It's not fair to her to suffer the consequences of being closed-minded or not being supportive, because this is the rest of her life we're talking about. It's scary. As a parent, it's scary.
But could they live on their own without? No.
But could they live on their own with little supervision? Yeah, they can. Cody can do a lot of things that so can Andrew. I mean, they can't drive, so they need support there. And as a parent, your biggest fear is safety. Are they safe? I want to make sure, because people will take advantage. And I mean, it's happened to her before. She had money stolen, and because she's trusting, and that worries us quite a bit. But a safe environment where she's not lonely, and they can, because they could live on their own with supervision, with help. Like taking them grocery shopping and checking in on, make sure everything's okay, making sure paying the bills, handling their finances, that sort of thing. So they had that kind of support, they could.
But she can stay by. She stays by herself during the day. She doesn't have to have 24-hour constant supervision.
Yeah, you ask her if she wants to go. We're gonna go to lunch. You wanna go? No. Well, she's got stuff to do. She'll stay home. And before I retired, I traveled a lot. So I was out of town quite a bit. And Donna works, and she'd be home by herself all day. And she'd have a ball. we just kinda intrude when we got home, you know, so, you know, she, yeah, like I said, she's very independent, and likes her independence. She's not afraid to, you know, I'm afraid to have her, you know, move out someplace else where I don't have constant, but, yeah, and Cody's the same way.
How has the relationship between her and her brother like grown through the years?
She's taught him like she taught us, patience, kindness.
They've always gotten along. You know how a lot of times brothers and sisters will fight, and they never really do. So,
He's always been protective.
however, if he has a girlfriend, that's a hard thing for her to accept.
Yeah,
When several people have girlfriends and boyfriends, it's hard for her to accept that. But, and it's okay for her to have a boyfriend, but not so much for him. However, the one he has now,
she really likes.
she likes her. There have been some others that she hasn't.
She pays attention, you know, I mean, she'll come in and she asks her questions and asks her about her day and, you know, talk to her, you know, about, you know, girly stuff, and she likes her. So it's okay, this one's okay. There has been some that she not. Yeah, the relationship is.
They do get along. He doesn't put up with anything though either, so.
If he watches her and, you know, or stays with her when she was younger, and we have to go someplace, you know, he'd make her toe the line. You know, just like as if we were here. She couldn't get away with anything just because mom was there. You know, and he'd, you know, make her get up at the right time, and, you know, make sure she got her shower and get dinner, and, you know, so, yeah. It's been fun to watch them as kids growing up. We lived in Phoenix, we lived in the pool. She loves to swim. And so we spend all this time in the pool, and they get playing with each other in the pool and splashing and just having a good time. They had float toys, and, you know, and they chase each other. They had a lot of fun. And he would let her win sometimes, just keep her interested. So,
He's a very well-rounded young man, very mature beyond his years.
yeah. And I think a lot of that's because of her. You know, I mean, when he was in high school, he was kind of everything. He was kind of a freak, kind of a geek, kind of a nerd, kind of a jock. Because he led the golf team in Hillcrest. He graduated 8th in his class with a 4.09, and he had a heavy metal Christian rock band where he was the lead screamer. And one of the best basketball players I've ever coached. He's only 5'7", but he's the best point guard I've ever coached. He's really good. So he was a jock. He was a geek, nerd, you know, and kind of a freak. So he was well-rounded, like I said. And like I said, he graduated at the university here with 2 majors, econ and math. And then he's got his master's now, like I said. And they've actually asked him to get a PhD. Their new program that they're talking about, the PhD in statistics is theory-based. They want it to be application-based, so they're trying to, he's got it approved to do it. He had to go to the dean, get it approved, all that kind of stuff. And I don't know how all that works, you do. And then he had to get a 5-person committee to support it, and then they will present it, and then he'll be the first with a PhD in statistics, applied rather than theory-based. So, but he's real smart. I have no idea what he's doing when he's working. I'm very sure of what is out. He moved home. It was, and really Heather was tickled with this because she'd always say, Taylor needs to move home. He just needs to move home because he lived all through his undergrad and through the first year of as he changed his major. He didn't know what he wanted to do until he was first year of graduate school. So then he had to go an extra semester to get it because he was going to get his master's in econ. She'd say he needs to move home. Well, now he's moved home because he'll get it in December, and he expected to get a job right away, which statisticians are huge demand. And so he didn't want to sign an August to August lease because he'll end up moving to Chicago or Cincinnati or someplace anyway. And then they approached him about this PhD program, and they're paying for it. So that's cool. And I'll I'm tapped out. But yeah, she's glad to have him home. He's really glad to have him home, and he gives her a bad time. And he didn't think I was gonna be home. I get to fix her lunch every day now too. That's one of the good things about being retired, is I fix her lunch every day. But he didn't think I was gonna be home in time, and so he fixed her lunch. He was home, he didn't have class till 2. And so he fixed her lunch. But he watches out for her. But yeah, fixing her lunch is really fun because she makes her salad, and she makes it the same way every time. And if I don't have little turkey meaty pepperonis, I've convinced her it is okay to use bacon bits. So it's okay now, she's a little bit.
She's trying to be
she'll do that.
flexible.
That's one thing we
our
talked
word,
about.
is flexible.
That's been a real good word for us to use with her, flexible, because she cannot be. Yeah, she fixes the salad every day, and she's got light ranch, and she has to have cheese on it, and she has to have tomatoes on it, and she has to have lettuce and little turkey pepperonis or bacon bits, and she makes it herself, and then I'll fix her, her entree. But it's kind of fun, because we do it in the kitchen together, and then she's. Anybody have any concerns about kids and some things you hear horror stories, I'm sure, but
We don't have any.
you don't have any, we don't have any horror stories. Even the friends she's had over the years, I don't have any horror stories. Nothing. Kids, I think behavioral problems is probably your biggest challenge, isn't it? Kids with behavioral problems.
Probably for most people.
Yeah, it would be for me. I mean, having a child that needs extra attention is not a big deal.
We tried to work on her social skills a lot as she was growing up, because socially, if you can adapt and deal, I think that you're a lot better off.
Yeah, she's very social. And like I said, we took her everywhere. And we had friends because we were older, and when we had kids, and and we'd go boating and skiing and going to Bahamas, Hawaii, and doing all this kind of stuff before we had kids. And then when we had kids, our friends who did have kids says, oh, they're going to slow you down. Your life is going to change. Well, two things happened, or one thing happened out of those two things. Our life did change, but we didn't slow down. And it was change. It was a change for the good. Because once we had kids, we just took them everywhere. I mean, Heather was on a plane the first time, which is, actually it was on her first birthday. And Taylor, same thing. We get on a plane, we go somewhere, and they've been all kinds of places and stuff. And of course, we're from the West Coast, so we go up to Washington and Montana, that's where my folks are at, where my dad is now. And right there, here we go, let's go. Go out to eat, go to dinner, go do something, go to Disneyland, first time at Disneyland, and how are we doing for time?
I think there's just.
Are you done? At 6? 15 minutes ago?
You have a couple minutes.
Okay, I know one story now. When you take a child to Disneyland, you gotta look at it especially in Heather's eyes. You gotta look at it through the child's eyes, because we took her to Disney, because we lived in Phoenix at the time. And so we'd go to Disneyland, not Disney World. And we'd make a big joke out of it. Disneyland, if you're Mike Tyson's Disneyland. And that was a big joke. Anyway, and we stayed at the hotel and had to have to go to the swimming pool. It'd be cold as could be, and she'd go swimming. Nobody else would, she would. But anyway, we first time taking them to Disneyland, we got there's no lines at the Pirates of the Caribbean. Now that's a cool ride. Has anybody been on that ride? That's a cool ride, right? For you. Try to think of it for a 6-year. How old was you? 6? 6-year-old girl afraid of the dark, and not afraid of the dark, doesn't like the dark. So when we got on in the first dip, you go down in that deal, and we had some young girls in front of us. As soon as we did it, they screamed, and it scared her to death. She's holding on to my shirt like this, just shaking, through the whole ride. And I told Donna, I said, we got out of that ride. I said, well, now that we've psychologically damaged our children, because maybe you can't get off, And then so she didn't like any ride. She didn't like, we even Pinocchio.
Pinocchio was in a cage.
Yeah, Pinocchio was in a cage, and then Pinocchio was wrapped up with rope, and she goes, oh no, and she had her hand right here, she's shaking. No, we're not doing any of those rides no more. I had to look at it through her eyes, I did.
Well, thank y'all so much.
Welcome.
Thank you.